In progress.
First page of the mimer, right after the brackets, we were speaking about what does it mean that there is in the teva. We need to make oir. Oir, light, is something that's created by Hashem. What's it mean? Tzoyar tasa leteva. The literal meaning of tzoyar means light. Light is not something that we make. Light is something that Hashem makes. And we said that the teva also is going on the words of Tefillah and Torah, because what happened to Noach and Hashem's remembrance of Noach is something that applies to all Yidden in all times, because that's why we even mention it in Yom Kippur, in Rosh Hashanah davening, when we talk about the remembrance of the Jewish people. We refer to the remembrance in Tevas Noach. So again, we're holding the second paragraph, first page of the mimer, in the middle of the paragraph, right after the brackets, practically at the beginning of the line of like 7-8 lines down. So now, going back to what the Baal Shem Tov says, that it's going on the teva, Boyal teva is referring to entering the words of davening and learning. According to this, we need to say that also what Noach was commanded to make a light, an illumination for the teva. It doesn't just mean that he made a physical illumination for the physical ark, but he also means Yidden in general that enter into the words of davening and learning needs to make an illumination, a tzoyar, into the words of Torah and Tefillah. And here there's also that type of question. Seemingly, we need to understand how is it applicable, the idea of making, when you're talking about the words of Torah. The Torah was entirely given from above. Like it says, that I spoke to you from the heavens. He made you hear his voice from the heavens. Kim spoke, I am Hashem your God. So if it's coming from Hashem, what does it mean that Hashem's words needs to be illuminated? We need to make light into the words. That the person through his avodah makes tzoyar, the idea of light, in the words of Torah. Third paragraph. It's also known the explanation. In what it says, you shall make light in the teva. Baal Shem Tov says the inyan tzoyar tasel teva, the idea of the tzoyar that you have to make to the ark. Initially, there was a decree from above about the flood. Concerning this, Hashem told Noach, you should make a light to the teva. You should transform the Hashem's attribute of judgment and judging the world and punishing the world to the midah of compassion, which means you take the word tzara, which means problem, trouble, and you take that tzara and you make it tzoyar tasla teva, make an illumination, make Hashem's rachman becomes revealed. Pirish, what does this mean? That you're taking the tzara and transforming it to tzoyar. In Isa b'Seif Yitzira beis avonim boinus beis batim gimel avonim boinus shisha batim. In Seif Yitzira it says 2 stones, meaning 2 letters of the aleph base. You can make out of it 2 words. If you have the 2 letters aleph and beis, you can make the word av, you can make the word ba. If you have 3 letters, you can make 6 words. Therefore, since if you have 6 letters, you can make if you have 3 letters, you can make 6 words. Moving from this is understood that the 3 letters of the word tzoyar has in it 6 possible combinations, 6 possible permutations, different ways how they can be combined to make different words. And the Rebbe says in the brackets, 5 of those combinations is known, the meaning of those words, and the 6th is not known. So now, going back to our word of tzoyar, the echad atzirufim utzara, one of the combinations of the word tzoyar is the word tzara. The echad atzirufim utzoyar, one of the combinations is the word tzoyar, meaning light. The tachlis hakavoni lahafech atzara letzoyar. That's why the Baal Shem Tov says that the ultimate purpose is to transform the tzara, the problem, the trouble, to light. So now, taking this vart of the Baal Shem Tov, and we put it together with a different vart of the Baal Shem Tov, that we need to illuminate, you need to enter the ark, meaning the ark is talking about the teva, is talking about the words of Torah and Tefillah. According to the above mentioned explanation, that the teva of Noach is the words of davening and learning. We need even more explanation. How could there be the idea of tzara in Torah and davening that you need to transform it to a tzayar? You're talking about davening, you're talking about learning. When you're talking about the literal meaning, you're talking about the mabel, yes, we said we have to transform Hashem's midah of din to the midah of rachmim. But you're talking about learning, you're talking about davening. How could it be tzara in learning and davening? And now you have to transform that tzara into tzayar. Top of the second page. But the explanation of this matter is, though the Torah is entirely called Hashem's name, in other words, every single word in the Torah is considered another name of Hashem. Chassidus explains, just like a name, when you call somebody by name, the person turns to you. The same thing by learning Torah. Every and any word in Torah we're calling Hashem. But the main point is, though the Torah is coming from above, the entire Torah is holy with the holiness of emes. Every single word in Torah is truth, that Hashem is truth and His Torah is truth. So therefore, tzara in Torah is a very difficult thing to perceive and understand. How can you say that? But still in all, the way the Torah comes down here below is it's in such a manner that there's a measure to it and there's a boundary to it. The way the Torah comes down here, it does not have by itself what the pasuk says, that it's longer than the earth and broader than the sea. But we can bring in that length and breadth into Torah through the service of a person in studying Torah. We effect an increase in Torah, an addition in Torah. The Zohar says that one needs to increase the Torah, make the Torah grow. In this sense that we're talking about now, the growth of the Torah is broadening it to the greatest degree, that it should be beyond measure. Until it will be longer than the earth will be its measure, and it will be broader than the sea. That's what it means, transforming tzara to a tzoyar in Torah. The shoyrish teves tzara humoloshen tsar eng beloshen Yiddish. The root of the word tzara means the word tsar, meaning narrow, confined, constricted. Makim tzaru mugbal, a narrow and limited place. By day avoidus Yisrael mahavkim atzara l'tzoyar, through the avoid of Eden and Torah we transform the confinement and limitations to illumination. The tmura zeh Torah kvishi lamatam etzad atzmo. He boif in the Hagbala tzara, instead of the Torah, the way it's down here below is in the way of limitation tzara. Poilim shetia boif in the tzara leshon oir. We affect that it should be in a way of light. Shamitis inyan ha'oir. The true idea of light is the opposite of constriction. Shemeir b'chol makim b'limidi d'Hagbala. Light, if there's nothing blocking it, just keeps on expanding further and further. So light is the polar opposite of tzara. Tzara means confined, light means expansion. So that is the job of a Yid. When he learns Torah, that Torah, the way it comes down here, is limited and confined. So now he has to transform it to light that without confinement, without limitations. Ta'ase, leteiva, b'teivas hatfila. In a similar vein is the tzoyer that you make for the teva. When we're talking about the words of davening, that tefillah on its own is measured and has limitation and boundary. Where do we see this? Like it says that the metaphor for davening is what Yaakov saw, Sulam Mutzav Artzav Aroisha Magia Shemaim. He saw a ladder standing on the ground, and its head, the top of the ladder, reaches to the heavens. Hainu, this idea that standing on the ground, Shemitzad Atzma Hu'inyan Shomedidav Agbola, that davening on its own, before the Yid approaches it and rises up on that ladder, is measured and bounded. The Artza, that's the meaning of earth. It's bound in the earth. Through our avodah, we reach to the heavens. The broadness of above. He's going to go on the mind, but speaking that we're going from the constriction to the broadness. When it says hashamayma, that Shemaima with a hey at the end, that's higher than the level of Shemayim on its own. Like the very well-known examination of this word in the Amorim of my following of the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the essential broadness of Hashem is what we reach in and what we tap into in our davening. So we're going from the confines, we're going from tzara to tzoyar, to the broadness that light symbolizes both in davening and in learning. Second paragraph on the page. Not only is the content of a person's service to transform the tzara, which indicates something that's measured in boundary, to light, not only that, it's not that we're doing it despite the constraints, and we're leaving the constraints behind, and we're going to a level that's beyond constraints. It's something deeper. The very constraints itself is what's bringing about this beyond boundary. Like it says, from the confines and constraints, I called out to Yudke, respond to me in the broadness Yudke. Meaning that it's not despite, even though you could learn the pasuk that way as well, but it means actually the first is the cause for the second. Only and specifically through calling out of the constraints and confinement, we come to the essential broadness of Hashem. The general idea of Rosh Hashanah is about starting off in a state of confinement and going to the ultimate broadness. Especially the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar embodies this, the mitzvah yom b'shofar, because the mitzvah of the day of Shofar. So in other words, Shofar embodies the whole idea of what Rosh Hashanah is about, because that's the mitzvah of the day. That the blowing of the shofar has to be specifically putting the narrow end to our mouth. The rem is ledavar, and where's the hint for this? From what it says in Tehillim, from the confines I have called kipsaka halacha b'shulchan aruch, like the ruling in Shulchan Aruch that one must blow from the narrow end, not from the broad end of the shofar. That's the idea that from the confines we come to the broadness. The idea only from and through the confines we come to the essential broadness of Hashem. Just like physically, the very confines and the very narrow part of the shofar is what causes and brings about the broad sound that comes out from the other end. Like explained in a different place, the Chazal say that what it says, that Eini Hashem Elokecha b'Mereshis Hashana v'ad Achres Hashana. So Reshis they translate as being Rosh, from the word poor. So a year that is poor at its beginning will be rich at its end. Spiritually, that's also this type of, we begin out of a state of confinement, which poverty indicates, to a state of broadness. Through being poor at the beginning, from the confines, becomes the riches at the end, broadness. This to be found in every Rosh Hashanah, because on Rosh Hashanah it's affected a new concept, a new world. Like the Alter Rebbe explains at the end of Tanya, every Rosh Hashanah comes down a new light from above that never shone yet such a high light, such a high level. And therefore, since we're going to have such a broad revelation of light, so every Rosh Hashanah we need to have the avodah going from the state of confinement, because the state of confinement, Minam Meitzar, is the cause what brings about that higher level. From Rosh Hashanah, type of Minam Meitzar el Merchav. So now we have this manifest in our avodah throughout the year. It's like explained in many places. Rosh Hashanah is not called Chilus Hashanah at the beginning of the year, but the head, because like a head, that from it comes the life force and vitality to all the limbs and organs, the way they are already located in different parts of the body. The perfection of the head is when it gives life and vitality to the entire body. So therefore, just like in Rosh Hashanah we begin and the Minam Meitzar causes the Minam Merchav, so the same thing in a daily basis throughout the year we have this as well. That's why every single day the beginning of the avodah is from the confines, from constriction. We begin in a very narrow, emotional, intellectual state. It's just bittul to Hashem. It's just accepting the yoke of heaven by saying, I thank you, Hashem, I accept you, I mivat myself to you. And similarly, the avodah of davening every day, though the entire idea of tefillah and davening is about meitzar, it's bittul, it's kabbalas oil, similar to what's on Rosh Hashanah, the idea of accepting Hashem as king, still in all we find it depends. There are some parts of davening that are more this way, and some parts of davening that are already more expansive. Kol Makom still in all. Top of the third page. Ein oimdim lispal el matech kovid roish. The Chazal say one does not stand to daven only out of a level of sincerity. What does this sincerity mean? Hainu kachnav v'shiflus, a level of being subservient, a level of feeling low. Again, showing on constriction, bittul, kabbalas oil. More like this meaning of kovid roish that the Chazal say is explained in many places, and also in the Amarim of the Friedrich Rebbe. We find this transition, Minam Meitzar el HaMerchav, beprotius bamiris kriyashma, specifically in the reciting of Kriyashma. Shadagam shekriyashma b'chlal in Yom HaKabbalas oil, though Kriyashma in general is about accepting the yoke of heaven, Mikol Makom b'Kriyashma atzma Razal. Still in all concerning Kriyashma itself, the Chazal said, Lama Kadosh Shema L'Vayim Shemoya. Why does Shema precede V'Hayim Shemoya? First, a person should accept upon themselves the yoke of the kingdom of heaven by saying Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's bittul. Bittul is a level of, there is, the Minam Meitzar aspect. There is no development of understanding, just accepting Hashem. Afterwards, he accepts upon himself the yoke of the mitzvahs, which is a more involved type of acceptance. There's more emotion, etc., etc. Hine Amar Chazal, second paragraph on the third page, Chazal say, Hashem looked into the Torah and used it as a blueprint with which he created the world. Move on from this is understood. The fact that from Rosh Hashanah, which is the general thing, like we said, it's the head for all the limbs of the rest of the body. The same thing, it comes down to the rest of the year and all of its details, that you have the same min ha-meitzar al ha-merchav in the rest of the year. So how did that happen? Everything had to start with Torah. This is because in Torah you have a transition from min ha-meitzar al ha-merchav, because all inyanim in Torah come from a general state. And then it goes out in details. Where do we find this? All matters in Torah. The whole entire Torah, everything came initially out of one letter. The first letter, Aleph of Anochi. The letter Aleph of Anochi is a Tevis for Anochi. Anochi stands for whole Aseres HaDibros. The whole Aseres HaDibros stands for the entire Torah. Sheba Nichlu Kol Aseres HaDibros, in it is included all the Aseres HaDibros. Ubehem Nichlalas Kol Torah Shebeksav, and that is included all the written Torah. Torah Pirusha, the Torah was given to the Yidden with its explanation, meaning the oral Torah. The Hainu Gam Torah Shvape, also the Torah Shvape, Ad Al Kol Mashamat Tam Vasuk Asul Chadish, including also every Chiddush that a diligent student will come to say. All this is coming out of the Aleph of Anochi. It's understood the way the entire Torah is in the Aleph of Anochi. It's very constricted. It's min ha-meitzar. Ad lekutzi shal Aleph, till we go, it even is rooted in where the Aleph is rooted in, which is the point on top of the Aleph. Until there's a level that's beyond any letter and any type of point on top of the letter. Until it's even the earliest thought of Adam Kadmon. We know everything in the world is included in the early thought of Adam Kadmon. Like it's explained in a different place, it doesn't mean that this was once upon a time it was there. But rather, doesn't mean that in the past they were part of the early thought of Adam Kadmon. As opposed to once the world was created and all the details came out, so now Ak is emptied of all these things. It's not that way. Also now, Hareim Klulim, Machshava, Gdumeda, Kol Rega V'Reka, they're all included in the early thought of Adam Kadmon in every single moment. Valderach, Teres Baal Shem Tov, similar to the teaching of Baal Shem Tov, Shebechol Rega V'Rega Nishava, Kol Olam Kuloi, Me'ayin Gomer Liyesh Gomer, that in every single moment the entire world is brought into being from total nothingness to a total existence. Therefore, there's constantly that transition and coming down from the Machshava Gduma. Machshava Gduma da'ak nimshach inyan, from the early thought of Adam Kadmon, it comes down ad leprotim protim till details and details of details. The Marab Masecha, how many are your actions? The Magodl Masecha, how great are your actions? The Mavur Baruch Hagam B'Teres Chaim Parsha, like it's explained also in the middle of B'Teres Chaim at length in our Parsha. So now, once we understand how both in Torah and in existence and in davening there is the min ha-meitzar al ha-merchav, so we'll understand this tzara to tzoya. This general avoida of transforming the tzara to the light, from the constriction to broadness. There are two approaches. The avoida from above to below, and the avoida from below to above. Here we go back to the meaning of the two explanations of the word tzoyar. Yesh oimrim, some people say chaloin, that he built a window into the teva. Yesh oimrim even teva, some say he made a precious stone. The chaloin in Yanehusha or meirachai de asaras adovra haminea. What does a window mean? A window means you make a hole in a wall. You make a hole in the wall of the teva. You allow the light in. You're removing just something that's blocking the light. Ubaloshon HaMaimer, like the expression of the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe that we mentioned at the beginning, Sha'or de Chaloin V'amshachos Ha'or de Zav Malchus, the drawing down of light of the window, that's the Zeir Amp in the mid is coming into Malchus. Mashenkin in an Teiva, as opposed to a precious stone, Haimsham Malchus Asr B'chinas Evan Me'iram, that Malchus itself, the level of the stone, is what's shining. So that is coming from below to above versus above to below. The service of a person is the difference between turning away from bad, you're taking away the bad that can block the good from coming in, or doing good, which means from you are doing good, you are bringing in light. In general, these are the two types of traveling, which is Torah, the traveling from above to below, which is Torah. Hashem spoke to us, like we said. Tefillah and davening is the traveling from below to above, like the sulam, the ladder that we travel up. In these two ways, you have to turn the tzara into the tzoyar. You have to make it, specifically the person. Which should be from the confines to the broadness. It has to be the person has to call out. It says, that's why the study of Torah has to be prefaced by the brachas on the Torah. That first they have to make the brachas. The idea of bracha is drawing down. When we make a bracha on the Torah, we are drawing down Hashem Himself into the Torah. In addition to that, the etzem birchas Torah, the saknai, the enshech nesak doilam, afsein avodah. The very brachas on the Torah was something that was established by Anshe Knesset Agdoila, which shows again our participation. So even in Torah learning, there's the avoida of our participation. Similarly, in davening, though tefillah on its own is a very lofty thing, standing like a servant before his master, and still no. There has to be, as an introduction to this, the person's avoida. Giving tzedakah, first he gives a small coin to a poor person, and then he davens. Now he's going to conclude with the brachas. Who can connect us all what it says at the beginning of our parsha. These are the stories and the offspring of Noach, the Isa of Medrash. Why does it say twice Noach? That he comforted and made pleasant both for above and below. We could say these two approaches are what we said before, the elevation from below and the drawing down from below above. We could also say the Zogam. This is also after Parshas Noach. We come to read Parshas Lech Lecha. The Inyan Lech Lecha Roim is Gam Kin Lebeis Alich Sanal Lech Lecha twice. The word lech indicates these two travelings. In other words, it's as if you could read it lech, not lech lecha. Traveling from above to below and traveling from below to above. Through a perfect traveling, we're going to come to the land that I will show you. It will be a blessing. We receive all the blessings of Avram, brachas to Yitzchak, and the brachas of Yitzchak, brachas to Yaakov, Bechir Shabbat, and the brachas of Yaakov, the chose most of the forefathers. Adla bracha du foratz to goymer, until the bracha that you shall expand and spread out, that was only told to Yaakov. Nachla bli mitzarim, Yaakov was given an inheritance without boundaries, as opposed to it says about Avram, he was given boundaries. After pasuk said niskru dal druch soilim kumvur mokum acher, though it says foratz to yom of a cadence, fine of an egg, but it mentions all the four sides of the world. It's still a expansion without boundaries. There's a kasher of Yuchad Gamon's man says, man the Rebbe, it's also connected with this time of the day when the Rebbe said the Maimer, the time of the will of wills. So the Shlish is the Shabbos, the third meal of Shabbos, especially We're standing at the eve of the 7th of Cheshvan in that year. Because on the 7th of Cheshvan, rains of blessings descended. Because then the last one of the Yidden reached the river Pros, so therefore the rains could finally come down. Be the will of Hashem. All these matters should be fulfilled in us. Speedily in our days, Mamish, Begula Mitzvah Shlema, the Mashiach that came on the true and complete redemption through Mashiach.